driven by demand, must be. You know, if there was no demand for these products, there wouldn't be a business. And of course, we just saw how lucrative it actually is to produce these counterfeit goods.
It's a funny part of brands, because if you think about it, the reason that most of us would go out and buy a top brand, a desirable brand label from Nike to Mont Blanc to whatever it might be, is because it says something about us.
Right.
We're adopting the brand, we're making it part of our own package and a reflection of who we are, what we stand for. So I think there are two sorts of people. There are those who will only make sure that if they're going to go for a top brand, it must be authentic and real, because it says something, even if only to themselves, about themselves.
Right.
If they've gone and paid a tenth of the price for a knockoff. But yeah, the market is there. You know, as Darren was saying just now, particularly in a lot of Africa, where there just isn't the money for the top brands.
Is that not the issue? Because brands, rightfully so, are trying to create the demand, because they are in a business. So they want, you know, to increase their sales. So they're creating a demand, but unfortunately, not every consumer has access to a Nike shirt or a Louis Vuitton bag or whatever the case may be. So
they want the result, but they haven't got the means.
But they don't want to pay the.
So here's a solution.
So as a consumer, why pay $5.99 for a Kaiser Chiefs shirt instead of 100 Rand, you know, at the street corner? You know. So what is your thought on that, Anwar?
And I think at Nike we try and keep it really simple. We try and bring innovation and inspiration to every single athlete in the world. If you have a body, you're an athlete. And for us, from a product perspective, is that because of our connections with athletes and our core clubs, we actually bring that to the consumer. And what we try and do is that if you look at Kaiser Chiefs as an example, 40% of South Africans support Kaiser Chiefs. We have offerings from Kaiser Chiefs in terms of authentic Kaiser Chiefs Nike apparel and replica from 199 Rand up to 599. So if you had to look at it from a comparison with some of the counterfeits out there, is that here you're getting authentic product that brings the benefits of the technology that Nike brings to the athlete and then passing it on to the consumer. But then also in terms of how we have a considered design approach in terms of the products that we do as well, that the consumer does get that. So we look at all our consumer aspects, and Nike is a premium in segment. So every consumer does have an entry point into the brand.
At some point or another. But now the other issue is that you get what's called real fakes. That consumers actually don't even know the difference.
Well, that's debatable. I mean, if you're going out and you're buying a Mont Blanc watch for $1,000, you've got to be pretty switched off to know that it's to not understand that you're not buying the authentic item. So you know what?
But we're talking about educated consumers, you and I. We're talking about, let's look at not so educated consumers. They don't really know what the prices are.
I think it's fine on Mont Blanc and those types of things, but when it comes to drugs, counterfeit drugs, the idea is to blatantly confuse you. So from Viagra, we've done raids on huge amounts of Viagra taken at airports.
That's a safety concern.
And it's a massive safety concern. And the big other safety concern is where counterfeit spare parts for vehicles cause road deaths. And even in Nike apparel, where you get drugs coming through in the neck of the label, just because it happens to be counterfeit goods, it's very serious.
Yeah, and I think that gets to the point around consider design, the types of elements that you put into your product. I can use an example just from our Nike national team kits for the past World Cup, and as well as all our sponsored teams, is that each one of the jerseys was actually made of recycled polyester. So 8 of these bottles go into a jersey. And for the consumer to know that the brand is doing that, you don't get that benefit from a counterfeit product. Also in terms of the toxins, exactly to the point, that consumers are actually putting themselves at risk buying some of these products.
Right.
You're going to get the line, aren't you, between the very good fakes, because even the people who want to buy something get the benefit of something at a lower price still want it to look and perform as close to the original as possible. If there's a chasm of difference between the functionality and what the product's supposed to be, that market will dry up. So in order for them to sustain their counterfeit market, they've got to produce some really, really good stuff.
But does that not affect the brand in terms of, obviously the quality is not the same, but it's still in the mind of the consumer?
Obviously, because the consumer, there's a certain brand promise in terms of the quality and the performance element that you get from the product. And if the
That's a huge concern.
It's a huge concern, and I think it's besides just the fashionability of having a swoosh, the actual performance element won't be there. And if you get the disappointment of the counterfeit good, can't pass it on to the brand.
But do you think, Darren, that consumers are actually aware of the consequences to buying counterfeit goods? I mean, it's a bigger picture out there. It's a whole snowball effect.
I think no, I don't think. I think an attitude in South Africa is copying's okay, and it's even more prevalent in the UK. I mean, sorry, in China, in those types of. Absolutely. I mean, that's an attitudinal thing. And there's also sometimes reticence against big brands because they feel that the consumer may feel that they're exploited, but it's too easy to copy, too easy to get away with, and you saw those statistics that it's just an increasing way of money laundering, and it's a symptom of so many other crimes that it is. And I don't know if you're going to mention it, but there was a chap who was murdered.
Yes, I wanted to mention it. Constable Johan Norkia. Tell us about that incident.
There was a Durban police officer who's involved in policing the harbour there, and he was murdered about a month ago. The police, to their credit, made 4 arrests very, very quickly. One chap was shot. The other chap was found guilty and sentenced about a week ago and put in jail for 22 years. But these are people who are paid 30,000 Rand to make a hit. The real people behind that, well, alleged possibly a hit, is going to be organised crime, really, and they're getting away with it.
It just shows you how dangerous it is. Like we saw in the insert, these guys are criminals. What I wanted to talk to Anwar about is educating consumers on knowing then what's authentic and what's counterfeit. What are you doing to engage with consumers?
I can use an example with our partnership with Kaiser Chiefs as an example. It's just how we educate the consumer to let them understand the difference and why counterfeit is not the way to go. Our relationship and partnership with Kaiser Chiefs is that there is a royalty to be paid to Kaiser Chiefs, and that has a direct effect on their bottom line to go to the transfer market, buy the best players for the club. And in that way, a consumer that is not buying the authentic product is actually not supporting the club in that way. Right. So, and I think for us, it's a lot of work being done through this Kaiser Chiefs Supporter Network as an example of exactly the difference between counterfeit and authentic product, particularly explaining the benefits, but then also the bigger benefit to the club as well.
Giles, BAT, I think, has done a fantastic job on educating consumers, you know, with their radio ad that says, if you buy counterfeit cigarettes, this is what happens. And it's they explain that whole, because do people know?
Well, I think people are becoming more and more conscious. I mean, the music industry and the film industry have kind of largely led the field, haven't they, in explaining that you're buying this piece of music because you like it and you want it. But if you are buying, if you're buying, you know, counterfeit CDs or DVDs and so on, then that money is not going into the very industry that is creating that, and you're damaging the source that is providing you something. So making that link. So there's some good work being done there. But part of it's education, and part of it is attitudinal change. You know, because even people who do know and understand.
But it's still that need and the creation of that need. So what needs to be done to take away the need? I don't know. What can we do?
I would say it's certainly too difficult a question for me to answer. I mean, it's in the same territory as why police officers take bribes. You know,
but do luxury brands have to drop their price necessarily
to
make it? Because they don't want to be accessible to everyone.
It wouldn't be reasonable to say that if Nike came right down in price, that it would remove the counterfeit industry. They would either just proportionately reduce their price, or there's still going to be better price points.
Because price is correlated to quality as well. Your thoughts on that, Anwar?
No, I think it's about making sure that the brand is accessible, and I used the example earlier that Nike is an accessible brand. The issue of counterfeit, yes, pricing might have an element, but it's not the only piece that is driving it. I think for us, it's like if you look at the country, our network with our retailers in the country is making sure that every single consumer, through various aspects, may it be a credit system, a lay-by system, or a cash system, has access financially in terms of being able to purchase the brand.
But still, there's a huge there's a huge pandemic out there. So Darren, your thoughts on what can be done to stop this?
Multifaceted. It affects on the one is demand, other is education, the other is on the enforcement side, getting proper laws in place, especially in the music industry, updating the Copyright Act, making sure the penalties are a deterrent. It's not just 6 months in jail or 3 months in jail.
Because it's negligible, isn't it? The punishment.
It's 5,000 rand per article. So it does carry a criminal offence, and to the credit of actually the customs officers, SARS, they are very active in the area, and I mean we do a raid literally a day. Wow. On counterfeit goods. So it is happening.
Excellent.
And the other part is governments and governments particularly weighing in. I mean, you can go to Dubai, and in the old city in Dubai, there is a fake market.
Absolutely, accessible to anyone.
Yeah,
and it's
you go
right
in
there.
and you know everything you're buying is fake, and it's just an
allowed.
accepted, tolerated thing, and that sort of behaviour is unacceptable on the behalf of. On the part of governments and society.
Well, we hope we're going to see a big change and a shift for brands. You know, it's especially for big brands like Nike to actually make sure that everything's authentic. So thank you very much for joining us on Media and Money today.